opportunity versus what you have in a country like Brazil, which is actually
You're going to give me two examples of what?
So what I'm saying is, in the U.S. we have what's called equal opportunity laws, and in a country like Brazil, they have affirmative action. So in Brazil, this is a project that I worked on with the State Department, was that in Brazil, they actually have a promotion based on historical discrimination, whereas in the U.S. you have a comprehensive evaluation that puts people on the same ground.
But they use race to give black prospective students extra points. So they're using race to evaluate the merits of membership. It's one of the factors that they consider, right?
Quota systems were actually banned based on the Supreme Court decision.
Right. I'm not saying quota, I'm saying they give them extra points. If they did that, which I know they do, they are using a racist policy. They are doing something against what you propose. They're using race to evaluate the merits of membership into their university.
Well, what they're trying to do is correct for past wrongs, so that's historic discrimination.
Right.
Again,
so are you in favor of that? So you do think that race should be used to evaluate people, even though you just agreed a moment ago that race doesn't determine their skills or merits, and you agreed with Martin Luther King that you should judge people by their character and not by the color of their skin, right?
So the way it works in the United States is you cannot use a racial quota system in any means. So what we have, it's called equal opportunity for employment. So that actually works in a system where you need to put everyone on the same level. Now, in higher education,
in that system, do they use race as a factor?
In equal opportunity, you cannot promote or hire based on race.
Yep. Do they use race as one of the factors that they consider?
Are you referring to jobs or university?
University is what we're talking about.
There's two different systems. So equal opportunity employment, we have a commission for that. That is handled for jobs. Now, for universities, especially at a state university, I'm from Georgia, I'm from the South, slavery existed as an institution for 300 or so years. You have to correct for past wrongs, and you have to do something about that. And so using race as a factor among many others that can determine someone's qualifications might be part of that process. But again, we have banned quota systems, so you cannot use race.
But you're contradicting yourself, because first you say that you should not use race to evaluate the membership into an organization, and then you're saying, yeah, you should if you consider this race was historically prejudiced in the past. So that's a contradiction. Either you follow Martin Luther King and you say, judge people solely by their character, not the color of their skin, or you say, no, sometimes I'm going to use race as a factor, and I think that's fine.
Well, if only things were that simple, right? But that's actually not the way things work. So what you want to see is
I just want you to be clear on which of the two you agree with. Because you agree with the basic truths, which is race does not determine a person's merits or character. You should go by their actions. So if he's a student, you should look at the merits of his application simply based on his scores and his grades, and you shouldn't consider race for anything.
That's not what I said. So what we have in the U.S. is a legacy of slavery, a legacy of problems, and those still need to be addressed. There's amazing information about what privilege is and what that means. And
so you shouldn't judge people based on their individual actions. You should judge them on the basis of their membership of a racial group. Is that correct?
That's an oversimplification. So what we have in the U.S., you cannot use a quota system. In employment, you have to go by equal opportunity commission standards. And in higher education, historical injustice can be a partial factor in an overall comprehensive application.
So these are affirmative action programs.
No.
And so, for example, in the federal government, they have set-asides. And certain amount of contracts are set aside for minorities, racial minorities. That is a racist policy according to your standards that you agreed to initially in this interview. Not? Is it not?
Well, I'm not sure the specifics of the programs that you mentioned, but I can say for
Set-asides
example,
for the federal government construction programs. And in the case of the equal opportunity that you're talking about, if you don't have a certain amount of people in the race that the government says you have to have, you expose yourself to a lawsuit. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with those practices.
Well, so then so the only way to make sure you don't get sued by the federal government is to have a quota to get the amount of black people that they want in your organization. Then you're sure you don't get sued. So that's also using race. Shouldn't our laws be colorblind?
We need to correct for past injustice.
So
and
you
we
think
need to
they shouldn't be?